moments of silent experimentation that the future whispered its first hints. They did not know they were ancestors. They did not know that their curiosity would echo across eons. Yet, with every step across the savanna, every cautious glance at the horizon, Australopithecus afarensis carried the seed of something unprecedented, a mind that would one day question the universe. From the shadows of instinct, the light of reason was beginning to glow. The African plains were both cradle and crucible, a realm where life itself was tested daily. To the early hominins, survival was not a choice but a constant negotiation with the unpredictable forces of nature. Every sunrise brought new opportunities and new dangers. The land was alive with motion. Herds of grazing beasts thundered across the horizon, vultures circled above, and predators lurked in the tall grass, their presence betrayed only by the flick of a tail or the sudden silence of birds. For Australopithecus afarensis, survival depended on perception. They had no claws, no fangs, no speed to outmatch a cheetah or strength to rival a leopard. Their advantage was awareness. Eyes sharp to movement, ears tuned to the faintest rustle, instincts refined by generations of fear. They learned to read the savanna as one might read a story. The patterns of migration, the warning calls of birds, the scent of rain that promised both water and peril. The climate, too, was an unpredictable adversary. The earth was cooling. Seasons stretched longer and harsher. Droughts would parch the rivers, forcing herds to wander and hominins to follow. When storms broke, they brought floods that reshaped the land overnight. The savanna was a place of extremes, testing, refining, and, in its own relentless way, teaching. Predators ruled the food chain, but intelligence began to shift the balance. A carcass left by lions might feed a family of afarensis if they could reach it first. They scavenged what others left behind. Marrow, from bones, scraps of meat torn by teeth and stone. It was dangerous work. One wrong step could end in silence. But hunger has always been the architect of evolution, and necessity the first spark of creativity. It was through this daily struggle that the mind evolved. Every escape, every observation, every decision woven into the tapestry of instinct sharpened by thought. They began to recognize cause and effect, to anticipate outcomes, to act not just from fear, but from foresight. This was not yet reason as we know it, but it was its embryonic form, the mind learning to see beyond the immediate. And as night fell over the plains, their fires had not yet been lit, but their eyes followed the stars. The darkness brought predators close, yet it also brought reflection, a quiet, ancient awareness that survival was more than endurance. It was learning, adapting, becoming. From the struggle for existence emerged the foundation of understanding, and the next great leap was about to begin. Somewhere in the heart of the African Rift Valley, a sound echoed that had never been heard before, the crack of stone striking stone. It was not thunder, nor the snapping of branches. It was the beginning of thought made manifest. One curious hand, guided by instinct and something far deeper, brought two rocks together. When they met, a fragment broke free, a sharp edge glinting in the sun. It was simple. It was revolutionary. It was the birth of intention. For Australopithecus afarensis, this moment was not a grand revelation, but a series of small discoveries born of need. A broken stone could slice through tough hide, open marrow-rich bones, or scrape roots clean. The act of striking was accidental at first, rocks clashing during foraging, one breaking upon another. But repetition bred understanding. They began to recognize patterns, to anticipate the result of action. For the first time in Earth's long history, a creature was shaping the environment through foresight, not instinct. This was the spark, the shift from reacting to creating. The savanna became not only a place of danger but a workshop of the mind. A discarded bone became a tool, a rock became an idea, and in that idea lay the foundation of everything that would follow: art, language, civilization. The first fracture of stone was the first fracture of ignorance. Yet, intelligence was still fragile, a flickering flame in a vast darkness. Each generation rediscovered, refined, and repeated what had been learned. The rhythm of thought spread like a whisper between individuals, one observing, another imitating. Learning was no longer confined to survival. It had become an inheritance, passed through example. They were not merely existing in nature, they were beginning to question it. Imagine that moment, the eyes of an early ancestor staring at the shard in their hand, realizing it could change something. That realization, that whisper of possibility, was the seed of humanity itself. Every great invention, every story told, every dream of progress can trace its lineage back to that instant when stone met stone and meaning was born. And so, beneath the sun of a forgotten age, intelligence flickered to life. Small, fragile, unstoppable. What do you think triggered that spark? Was it hunger, fear, or the unstoppable pull of curiosity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The sun rose over the Rift Valley, spilling golden light across a land both ancient and awakening. On a flat stretch of volcanic plain, a small group of early hominins gathered around something new, something that would alter the course of their existence. In their hands, crude shards of stone caught the morning glow, edges sharp and purposeful. The first tools had been born, and with them, the dawn of technology. At first glance, these tools were simple: flakes chipped from larger rocks, cores broken open to expose jagged lines. Yet simplicity is deceptive. In their fractured edges lay intention, the understanding that nature could be shaped to serve a purpose. These early innovators didn't yet know what they had created, but they sensed its power. A shaped stone could strip bark from branches, cut through sinew, or open the bones of fallen prey. It was efficiency embodied, a new extension of the body and the mind. The process was deliberate. Selecting the right stone required observation, hard enough to fracture, but not so brittle that it shattered. The act of striking required control, a rhythm that blended strength and precision. Those who learned this dance between hand and rock carried an advantage that no claw or tooth could match. For the first time, survival depended not on what evolution had given them, but on what they could imagine. Over time, these primitive tools evolved into distinct shapes. Archaeologists would one day name them Oldowan tools, the earliest known evidence of human craftsmanship. Each mark on stone told a story of experimentation, of trial and error, of minds reaching toward mastery. They were not just making tools, they were building a relationship with cause and effect, transforming thought into action. The invention spread slowly, across generations and landscapes. Knowledge was shared not through words, but through demonstration, a gesture, a strike, a result. This silent transmission of skill became the first form of education, the beginning of culture itself. The very act of creation united them, shaping bonds that transcended instinct. In that moment, technology was not a machine or a weapon. It was awareness solidified, a piece of the mind made tangible. Every spark that would follow, fire, art, architecture, was contained in that first fragment of stone. The birth of technology was the birth of possibility. The plains of East Africa were no longer just an arena of survival. They had become a stage for competition of the mind. The first stone tools had changed everything. Those who mastered them gained not only food, but influence. For the early hominins, technology was more than a means of survival. It was a symbol of understanding, a quiet revolution that began to reshape the balance between species and between each other. Predators still ruled the savanna, but now, for the first time, humans could challenge them. A sharpened flake could strip flesh from bone faster than teeth alone. A stone core could crush the marrow that nourished the brain. What once belonged to lions and hyenas was now contested by creatures who thought before they acted. Innovation had tipped the scales. Every tool struck against stone was a declaration. Adaptation was no longer random. It was intentional. But innovation bred rivalry. Within small groups of Australopithecus and later Homo habilis, the first traces of hierarchy began to appear. Those with skill in toolmaking gained respect. and power. The ability to create and to teach became a form of dominance. For the first time, knowledge was a resource, and like all resources, it could divide as much as it united. The savanna witnessed this silent evolution. As seasons changed and droughts swept across the land, the competition for food intensified. Some groups refined their tools, shaping sharper flakes, stronger edges. Others fell behind, clinging to old methods. Nature favored the innovators, the ones who dared to experiment. Those who adapted survived. Those who did not vanished into the sediment of time. This new intelligence also carried emotional weight. Cooperation and conflict began to coexist. Bonds of trust were necessary for hunting and foraging, but the same intelligence that fostered unity also planted seeds of ambition. Early humans were no longer driven purely by instinct, they were driven by choice. And with choice came consequence. In this crucible of competition, evolution accelerated. Each discovery pushed the next generation further. Observation became experimentation. Necessity became invention. The savanna had forged its most remarkable creation, not a species defined by its strength, but by its capacity to change. Innovation was no longer a reaction to danger. It had become the strategy of survival itself. The creation of the first tools did not just change the way our ancestors lived, it changed what it meant to be alive. Once, the savanna dictated every movement, every choice. Now, the early humans were beginning to dictate theirs. With stone in hand, they were no longer entirely at the mercy of the wild. They had become participants in shaping it. The consequences rippled through every corner of their world. A sharpened edge meant faster access to food, more energy, and over generations, bigger brains. Stone tools became the engines of evolution. With each blow against the rock, muscle and mind co-evolved, hands growing more dexterous, vision sharper, coordination more precise. Technology was not just changing their surroundings, it was sculpting their anatomy. The balance of nature began to tilt. Scavengers who once dominated carcasses found new competition in these thinking primates. Where once they waited for predators to feed, now they arrived early, armed with tools that gave them speed and precision. They became opportunists turned strategists, reshaping the food chain one strike at a time. But progress carried its own price. The dependence on tools deepened. As generations passed, survival without them became unthinkable. A creature that once climbed trees and lived on instinct was now tied to its creations. Technology had become both salvation and burden, the beginning of a relationship that would define the human condition forever. Social bonds also evolved. The process of making tools required cooperation, imitation, teaching. It created shared goals, shared memories, shared identity. For the first time, culture was taking root, not written, not spoken, but transmitted through action. A gesture, a glance, a strike of stone, that was their language. And yet, every new advantage created a new challenge. As resources dwindled, as groups grew, conflicts emerged. The same intelligence that allowed them to thrive also brought rivalry and fear. Discovery had unleashed potential, and with it, consequence. The first tools did more than cut flesh. They cut open destiny. When do you think progress stopped being survival and became power? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Long after their hands struck the first stones, time buried their creations beneath layers of ash and soil. Yet those fragments endured, silent witnesses to the dawn of human ingenuity. Millions of years later, the earth would reveal them again. Sharp flakes, battered cores, and the ghostly impressions of beings who once walked upright through the cradle of civilization. These echoes of a vanished age still speak, not in words, but in the language of survival and invention. Archaeologists, kneeling in the dust of Oldowan Gorge and Hadar, have pieced together this story grain by grain. The tools tell a tale of persistence, crude at first, then gradually more refined, shaped by countless generations who never knew they were inventors. Each layer of sediment preserves a moment of transition, marking the slow, relentless rise of intelligence. What began as random strikes had become deliberate craftsmanship. The mind was evolving faster than the body. The world around them changed as well. The climate shifted again, cooling and drying. Forests receded, rivers migrated, and the open savanna stretched wider each year. New species emerged, more adaptable, more capable, descendants of those first tool makers. Among them, Homo habilis would rise, their hands more precise, their minds more complex. The spark that had once flickered in the shadows now burned steadily, guiding evolution forward. Every discovery unearthed today is more than an artifact. It is a conversation across time. The grooves, chips, and fractures are fingerprints of thought. They whisper of curiosity, of necessity, of the moment the universe became aware of itself through the eyes of an ape who dared to question. These stones are not mere relics. They are mirrors reflecting the origins of us all. In them lies the continuity of existence, the bridge between instinct and intellect, between survival and imagination. They remind us that our story did not begin with cities, language, or art, but with silence and persistence, with the courage to strike a rock and believe it could be more. Every flake unearthed is a heartbeat of that forgotten world, proof that the first tools were not only instruments of survival, but messages from our ancestors, carved in stone, echoing through time. The story of humanity is etched in stone, literally and metaphorically. Every flake, every chipped edge, every mark left by an ancient hand tells of a mind awakening, a will asserting itself against the indifference of nature. The first tools were more than instruments. They were declarations. Each one said, "We are here. We can, change the world." From those primitive shards, a lineage of innovation unfolded that would stretch across millennia. The act of shaping stone taught our ancestors more than technique. It taught them intention, to plan, to anticipate, to create something that did not yet exist. That mental blueprint became the seed of every future invention. The same brain that once struck stone in the Rift Valley would one day paint on cave walls, forge metal, build ships, and launch satellites into the stars. The legacy of the first toolmakers is not measured in the stones they left behind, but in the transformation they initiated. They turned adaptation into art, necessity into creativity. They proved that survival could be guided by imagination, that evolution was no longer bound to chance, but could be influenced by will. With every strike, they pushed the boundary between animal and human further apart. Even now, when archaeologists hold those tools in their hands, they are touching the genesis of every human achievement. The grooves worn into the rock by ancient fingers are echoes of curiosity, the same curiosity that still drives discovery today. From the Oldowan flakes to the chisels of artisans to the microchips of our modern age, each is a descendant of that first question asked in stone, what if? The irony is profound. The first tools were fragile, their makers mortal, their intentions simple. Yet the consequences of their actions endure longer than the mountains that sheltered them. The stones they shaped outlasted their bones, their tribes, their species, and still, they speak. In every invention, in every act of creation, there is a whisper from that distant age, a reminder that progress is not born of comfort, but of curiosity and struggle. The legacy of stone is not just about tools, it is about transformation. The moment we learned not only to survive in the world, but to remake it. As the last embers of daylight fade over the ancient African plains, the world holds its breath. The air hums with the same quiet tension that once surrounded the first spark of discovery. In the tall grass, a figure stands, upright, deliberate, holding a piece of stone not just as a tool, but as a symbol. This is the birth of awareness. This is the awakening of humanity. Generations had passed since the first hand struck stone, yet the legacy of that gesture still burned within their descendants. What began as a survival instinct had become something infinitely more profound, a quest to understand, to shape, to dream. The world had given rise to a creature capable not only of enduring it, but of questioning it. With each tool fashioned, the mind expanded. Curiosity evolved into imagination. Necessity transformed into creativity. The early humans had become more than inhabitants of the earth. They had become its storytellers. Fire would soon follow, then art, then language. But at the heart of every triumph, there remained the same spark that once flared in Sioux. The shadow of the Rift Valley, the desire to know why. The awakening of humanity was not a single moment, but a symphony of countless discoveries, each one echoing the same truth. Intelligence was not given, it was earned. Through struggle, through failure, through the unyielding will to understand, they carved meaning out of chaos. And with every strike of stone, they struck a chord that still resonates within us today. Look around at the world now, at the lights, the machines, the cities, stretching toward the sky. Every innovation, every step of progress is an echo of that ancient dawn. We are still the same species that once stared at the horizon and wondered what lay beyond it. The distance between us and those early ancestors is measured not in time, but in the endless pursuit of knowledge they began. Their story is our story, the story of minds that refuse to stop asking questions. If this journey through time inspired you, take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think truly defines the moment humanity awakened?